So we get
What's
feedback
up?
on this. I checked the feedback that you gave me, and
Mm-hmm.
you had stated that there were extra keys and some of the foot rotation. Like this foot was a bit wonky, so I
Mm-hmm.
fixed the foot. But I didn't understand what you meant by excess keys. Um,
Probably means everything's right. No, organized stuff. Okay, no problem. Normally, if I make that comment, it means for a blockout, you had too many keys. And for example, you got things here that are on ones. So that's one too many keys for like a blockout. So remember, that's the context in which it was said. If you kept working on it and you get to the point where okay,
for the
you realize
block.
yes, because that's what the grade's about. It's the blockout.
Oh,
So for a
did I
blockout, you
work
shouldn't
ahead?
have that.
So was I working ahead then?
Yes,
Oh,
because all you needed was keys and extremes. The breakdowns were everything that wasn't included in your blockout. That's what is due from MileStone 3,
okay.
which is Sunday's turn in.
Okay.
And then for 4, it's just you have everything in there. It's just polishing.
Okay. So how does this look so far? For my third milestone.
Let's have a look.
I'm forgetting I usually play slow before concluding.
Feels jerky, and probably has to do with that. Anytime you have keys that are set on ones, that's something that you should only use for things that are really, really, really fast.
Okay.
Otherwise, if it's an action that's taking place, let's say it's not incredibly fast, and you put everything on ones, then you're kind of going into, I guess, the kind of thing that stop motion photography has to deal with, which is okay, we're shooting a frame for every second. What do we do, and how do you make that look smooth? And in case of animation, you just avoid it unless again it's something that's going to happen really fast. You're pulling off some sort of magic trick essentially. All right, so right now your hold has like way too much change, and I say that because I can tell what your two keys are just from scrubbing through. To make that work, careful.
I'm gonna steal this from.
Wait, did you find the? So you have the other adapter?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now be really careful because
Yeah,
it's
I
easily
noticed.
frayed.
Yeah.
So plug this in first, then that, and you'll be safe and you won't die.
So does this mean I might have to actually delete a few of those
Yes.
frames?
Yes,
Okay.
and that's perfectly normal. In fact, when you're trying to sort things out,
But
it's always a good option to you save your scene and you try to accomplish whichever goal or tweak you're trying to do based on your feedback, or if just you're like, okay, I want to get more overlap and you're trying to experiment and then you realize, okay, it's gone into a weird place where it's not working, but some things are, then you go, okay, well, this key is helping, this one isn't, I'm going to get rid of it. So it's perfectly fine. But
so and I take it that the keys that I have to actually that I may potentially have to remove are within the first.
that's some of them. I'm going to go more in detail. First, it looks like your buttons aren't working. It's complaining about one controller.
Oh yeah.
Unless these buttons are meant for something else.
Everything that says bone in it, basically,
Mhm.
the last three. That's
Ah.
everything in regards to this character right here.
And in that case, if that's for something else, I'd put them somewhere else, or just make a new shelf and just put Boney in there. It's just a good practice to do anyway, so that if you ever switch rigs, you can just go drag it over there, drag it over there, drag it over there.
Okay, cool.
All right. So this hold, all you really need to do is you just grab a frame that is just slightly different, and that's what you use for the key. When it's done right, you jump back and forth between the two poses, your character will just feel like he's doing like a small kind of, like, call it a shimmy, but it's probably not. And that should be enough. Another thing I would try to do is hold your character down for at least like 12 frames or more. So 12 and 16 is kind of like the sweet spot for two poses. Yeah, there we go. So now when you look at it, he is, he feels like he's standing still, but he's still moving. You can't see it at this point, but if we zoom in, you know it's still happening. He's moving. But you just want it to be small enough to keep him alive, but not enough that you can notice. And that's what you want for a hold. Now, for an ease out, that's technically what you want in terms of what you were having before, where you could feel that he was moving, because the ease out is definitely going to be a lot faster. And you do want to show that the character just doesn't go, 60 miles an hour, but rather, okay, went 15, 25, 45, 60. All right. So hold it here. Let's see what you have at the end. So your last pose is this, and there's no hold. It's literally the animation just stopped. There is nothing. So your character's frozen in dead right now. If you don't want that to happen, and all you have to do, you could even just, let's see if this works. Grab an in between, and we're going to key it. And now we are going to move this guy somewhere else so he has time to in between. And we're going to, so let's say he settles in over here, and give it like 12 frames at least. All right, so let's say like frame 48. That's a good enough place. You could do more. Again, 12 to 16 is like a good spot. And let's send the animation there. That way he never freezes. So hold the first pose enough that we can see it, and then once you set on to the last pose, hold as we can see it.
Okay, I see.
All right. Let's see now. How do you know which keys to get rid of? Depends on what you're trying to do. But generally speaking, if you start to look at like two poses and they look almost exactly the same,
then you get rid of the one.
Yes, because it's not really contributing.
Okay, I see.
And then in here, let me show you this really quick. Start to draw it out because it's a lot faster to do than opposed to rigging. Definitely do that later. All right, so let's say, again, it's a simpler example, but it works times however many body parts you have. So let's assume that all your animation is this will work fine. All right, the ball is going to move from here to here. That's all that's going to happen. All right. So that's your keys. Just mark it like that. So that's your keys. And then you start adding your extremes. So in this case, for example, your anticipation. Let's say the ball moves this far back. That's technically an extreme. I'm just going to call it anticipation. If it bounced somewhere, that would be another extreme. Because it's showing like a big jump from like where he was, and it moves in it's a very drastic change in direction. It's very noticeable. It also marks like how high he moves off the ground, right? And then you might have maybe a couple bounces or something. And then when he comes to a stop, let's say it's over here, so maybe there we wherever it squashes, and then whenever it squashes down on the way back down, and then it rolls. All right, so let's say those are the extremes. Now when you're starting to break this out, now you got to figure out, okay, well, how am I going to go from here to here? That right now all I'm concerned with is so now you have to define, okay, how do I begin to move over here, and how do I set over here? That's your ease in and your ease out. All right, so in this case, all it is that you have a pose where it's somewhat close to where it was. Let's say that was 3, and then another one over here to show it changing direction over here. So let's say that was 6. But if he's not going to actually, you would have had maybe another pose. Would have been over here to have a hold. In the case of the ball, it doesn't have to go anywhere. But anyway, once we get over here, you're moving into this key or the anticipation, and then you start moving out. Now, once the ball starts to move and go into this, how it starts to pick up speed. So this is your ease out. That's your ease in. And when we start to move out again, that's another. This one over here. That's your ease out. Again, that's just showing that it's starting to accelerate. So we go into the anticipation and then we go. Let's say we had a little bit more room. Then in this case, some of the breakdowns that we'd be using here would be, okay, so I'm at the ease out point. The ball picked up some speed. These are breakdowns that I would add to control the spacing. All right. Let's say once it starts to get over here, let's say he does like a little bounce before we get into this. I'm gonna have like these poses, and that squash, and then puts up the ground. We have the extreme. I have some more ease in and ease out over here. More. And so on and so forth. And then once it starts to get towards the end, closer and closer, that this is technically my ease in. And then if he overshoots a little before he settles, that's part of the ease in, because you're showing how it settles. And that'll be it. Now, for your character right now, what I'm seeing is you had an attempt at a hold. It wasn't the most successful, but it was there. And then there's no anticipation, not a clear one at least. I mean, Soul he's lifting his arms and all that. But I know that in the video he just kind of went there. So it's up to you to define. Okay, do I want the anticipation to be? Because at the end of the day, what's really happening is he's in this first pose, and then he squashes and he goes in the opposite direction, right? So you got 2 ways to anticipate. He's over here, and then he goes. He actually leans forward before coming back, okay? Or since he is going to go down to the left, you're going to go up and to the right. So that's where you go to show an anticipation. Right? It's one of those things where again, there's more than one approach. You just have to pick one.
Okay.
So for example, if him going up feels a little bit more reasonable, you do that one. If you're like, no, I think he does. He should do that. Cool. At the end of the day, just pick one.
Okay. So I want to work with this space here, and then of course remove excess
And you need
keys
frames
here.
to do that. Yes, because remember, even here when I'm doing this ease out, that's going to be split apart maybe 4. Like let's say this key here was 24. This one might have been 20 frames before, and this one might be 4 frames later. Because those are the 2 things that you have, the 2 main tools that you have to control how everything feels. Where it is on screen, like how much it moved in comparison to the other pose, and how much time it actually takes. So normally what I tell people is, hey, if you can see your action and feel it and hear, as you go from frame to frame, you're on the right track. But if it all feels, because what you don't want is, what we're trying to avoid is, let's say all your character was doing was, he's going to raise his arm from here to here. Well, real life's okay, if I act out this action, I start up a little bit slow at the beginning, but then whoosh, I'm really fast and I'm over here, and then I settle. And in order to accomplish that, I can't do it if I have like here and here and here and here and here and here and here. That's I'd say one of the most common pitfalls when you're trying to learn animation. That it's like, oh, I need a key here and here. No, you don't. And just to give you an idea, let's see if I can find this really quick. Wow, this guy posted the whole thing. So this is a book that you can buy, where just like in the Animator Survival Kit, it explains all the concepts and whatever. I wouldn't say you should buy this book over the other one. The other one has way more stuff. But what I did like about this is when you buy the book, you have certain of the examples that he's using to illustrate how to accomplish something. You actually get to see them. There's one that I really like. It really clear things up. So that's all it is. Like, and here's somebody picking up a pencil, and then you can go frame by frame and see that way. Here's the keys. Here's the breakdown. Here's the timing. But that's not the one. Let's see. That's neat. This one is. It's just a character going, changing direction, and they're wearing a hat. Anyway. Perfect. That's the one. So this is all it is it's like if he's swatting a fly, right? Let's see what the first pose looks like. Okay, so key one, he's already on his way to do that. So think of it as, in this case, because we don't know the context or whatever, that's your first key. He's already there. That's how the scene starts. So first he has a couple poses that are close. Notice, again, 2 frames later. Now a lot of that has to do with the fact that it's more traditional and they wanted to hold the frames. That was a good way of not having to draw so much, but at the same time still keeping the character alive. So that's why they like that a lot. So you hold that for 2 frames. But once we start to speed up, notice again, and when you're looking at your animation, pick a body part and then pick a point that lets you know like how much it moves. So for example, in this case, you could just look at like the fingertip, for example. So this is where we were before. So again, they're very close. Starting to get farther away, farther and farther apart. Taking his time. 17 frames just to get that arm up. And that's intentional, because the more time you take to do something, the more anticipation it creates, not just what's gonna follow after, but in the viewer. He's doing all that. And that was less than a second. All right, so again, so technically this is the ease out there. Notice that the hand hasn't moved that far. All right, but in this case, he wasn't doing like a slow thing. All of a sudden, okay, still kind of there. It's that the elbow is dragging. So as you start to move your character's arms, like keep track of not just what was going on here and what the fingers were doing, what was the elbow doing, right? And look at that, nothing. It just literally went from it's midair to, and then he decides to spend a little bit of extra time showing how the swat happened. So anyway, let's see if we hit play. See that? Oh, there we go. There's the swap. That's what that feels like. Right. So, so with your guys. So again, you know how that looks. It obviously is a separate action, but nothing was on ones. Nothing really was. I mean, you know, everything was all on twos. Now, does that mean you can't do things on ones? Oh no, by all means, there are moments where you can use it. It's just that in here, there's nothing particularly fast going on, so I wouldn't for the time being. But yeah, anyway, what you know is he's moving his arms. For a moment there, if I hadn't seen the controllers being turned on, I would have thought that you were using FK because his arms. And normally, people that start using FK, they go, "Oh, this is so great!" Because I just moved this controller, it moves the arm. It's like, yeah, but it looks stiff as well. So you still need to look at your reference. You still need to analyze things. So just like I was showing you here, when he was raising his arm, you should probably be doing that too. And this is, I mean, this is something that could potentially fall under polishing, but polishing is more, or polishing, or rather, week 4. It's the time you'd be spending on, say, for example, when your character finally settles and you go like this, the smooth kind of settle into nothingness. That's what you'd be more worried about then. Here it's more about, okay, the more broader actions, like him raising his arms, like, wow. Having, for example, on the way up, not having that, but rather this drag and stuff already in there. All right, so post-wise, yes, there are things to do there. The other thing I would be fixing is, again, if you have issues with your feet, like right now, this is like changing somehow, and I can tell because the controller at one point tends to disappear. Let's see what you got here. So you got the tilt in the ball, but usually when you see that controller moving on and about, that means, it's either translating. It is.
What's translating the foot or the?
Yep. So right now he hasn't even taken the step. That foot's already moving. In fact, I think it's locking out. Oh yeah, that's bad. Yeah. So the easiest way to fix all these issues is just make sure that the values are the same. So if that foot doesn't move up until, actually, this is the foot that never moves. So all your values should be the same. What I would be doing is grab this, grab everything, make it the same. As far as what channels I mean by that, translates, rotate, all 3 translates, all 3 rotates. That way, if the foot is moving at all, then well, I didn't translate or rotate it at all. It has to be something else, and that's when you can narrow down, okay, it's one of these channels. All right. But now, is that your mouse, by the way? Oh, let me have that for a second. Let's go to that pose where the leg was locked out. Okay. All right, so if your intention was to have him lean over in that direction, a couple things needed to happen. The contrapposto. And if there's weight on this leg and less on this one, this hip has to go down, has to dip. Right? And then the hips always rotate, and one side obviously should be facing more towards the one where the leg is, and then the other one facing in the direction where the other one is. So that's step 1. Now, if you do all that and he's still acting weird, then you have no real choice other than, hey, just bring him down enough so that this can work. That said, you got like channels all over the place, or things changing here all over the place. Again, if that foot is not, if he's not doing anything of the sort like this, that all those should be 0. Right, so it looks like you still have, again, it's just small issues. Is that the spine? Perfect. Small issues as far as how the rig was keyed. And then something like that might work. Now, if his weight is too far off, why does this feel off center? You're doing the right thing, it's not. See, the reason I'm by the way, you didn't move the pivot of this controller or anything like that, right? You didn't do this?
No, it's been zeroed.
Okay.
Throughout.
Because it feels off center, which is a little odd because it's supposed to look like this. See, like it's perfectly in the center. Yours looks, I mean, I'm gonna pull it off just in case, but. Oh, crap, yeah, a little key on. No. And this might or might not affect how your guy rotates. But anyway, for the most part, it's working, so I think it should be okay, but I want to spend a couple minutes to make sure that the rig is okay. Okay, so what is he doing here? Oh, okay, so in this case, he's starting to go down, so initially what's going to happen when he goes down is it's not this, it's going to go down first. It's the body, followed by this, followed by that. So you're going to eventually have a pose that looks like that, especially as you're starting to go down. But Alright, so let's keep this, I guess, for your heel is up. Okay. I guess that's your out. These two are kind of similar. That. It's not weight shift. We haven't done anything here. This is where we're always trying to get you guys to create the strongest keys and extremes, because then once you start to have breakdowns, it becomes a problem. So. So yeah, just get rid of a couple of these keys, start simplifying things. And you don't need anything on ones really. Okay. Okay, so in this case, I would say the anticipation that you should have is he's going to go, based on your shot camera, he's going to go down to the right, so you should anticipate up and to the left.
So the anticipation needs to be somewhere in the middle.
Somewhere before he starts to move. So after he starts to leave the hold, that's when you would go this, and then you step. Look out, this is part of what I was saying. You have poses that are too similar. So in this case, this spot feels like it's stuck. So he's supposed to be mid-step. Every pose should, especially if you look at his hips, the hips shouldn't ever look like they stop. Also, notice this. So I jump back and forth. Maybe it's because I took some poses out. I don't know, like for example, from here, as I scrub back and forth between these three poses, this pose is a little bit off, but otherwise I'm perceiving that there's going to be an arc. That's something that should be going on right now. But once we go from there to say this one, that means it's just going to go straight up and down. There's no arc. you need to account for that. So that what's going to happen is this arm's going to be over here. Okay. So your arm's over there, and then it's over here, and then it's there. Here. Straight line again. Another straight line. And now it actually went back. And goes around there, and that's it. So this is how your hand is moving right now. This is just one of them. It's your job to start over here. So this time you'll see the arc that you are starting to make, even though it's kind of a weird kind of arc, but it'll turn out like an arc. From there to there, and here. Technically that will kind of look like an arc. It could be tweaked, but it's working. And then straight down, zigzag, another zigzag. That might turn into an arc, but again, right now the arm's like really stiff. You need to start pushing those details. Like if something's moving really fast. And there we go. So this will. That's one of the things you can be doing as you create your poses. Something is moving. Is it moving in an arc or a straight line? So you have to avoid anything that looks like this, like that, or even diagonals. Those kind of movements, like that's key 1, that's key 2, that's bad. Okay, that's gonna make them look stiff. Right, so again, rework your holds. Make sure you have a clear, very obvious anticipation.
So the anticipation needs to appear here. And
somewhere in there. The timing, I haven't even talked about that. That's something you have to sort out.
It just has to be before this frame, because that's when everything starts changing around that frame.
Mm-hmm. But then...
do I need to do anything between in here?
No, because that's a hold. It's just 2 poses. Right? Now, what I was showing you earlier with the ball, remember how I showed you ball's over here, starts to move, and then another one just before it gets to where it stops? You need room over there and time to do it. So what I'm trying to tell you, that very likely the timing that you have here, that's going to change. You're going to need more frames. Because right now your whole animation is 2 seconds.
Yeah.
You need a little bit more.
Well, that's the length of the reference. So
you can push it if to more if it's farther than that. Especially if you're trying to get something done and it's not quite working.
Is it possible to take this frame and push it to 8 and have the whole? Oh, so the hold needs to be longer?
No, the hold, I would keep it the way it is. What you had before was too short.
Oh.
So keep that hold the way it is, and then the rest of the action, time it to what you had in the video. Just because the frames don't match up frame by frame to the video doesn't mean you can't use it. As long as you know how long the action lasts in the video, you can put it anywhere in your animation.
So then, in order to extend this, I would need to push everything here back, essentially.
Yes. You grab all your controllers before you do this, and then you just move them. You can do it here in the timeline. Just make sure to grab the ones in the middle. You could go and so you could do it in the graph editor too. Again, just grab everything and move it. Or this is actually simpler. Just go on the dope sheet, grab the little squares. See how everything was selected is because the keys and everything, it's all connected. Right? And that'll give you the room. I typically advise people, hey, if you're going to move, let's say you're going to move these keys over here because you need more room. Everything that follows, move it all at the same time so you maintain the timing of whatever followed. And then what's going to happen is, let's say you start to nail the timing and the spacing of all your keys and not your keys, your breakdowns over here. and then this doesn't work, okay, cool. If this feels nice and this doesn't, okay, now you know you have to keep tweaking in this direction. Whereas if you make changes here, and then this still feels good, you're okay, I'm not going in the right direction here. I need to reassess what I did there. Right? Let's see. Something I should have said this earlier. He looks like he's sticking his chest out at the camera.
Yeah.
You could try to avoid that. I would set him up more, again, like 3/4 and yeah. So he's right. He is raising his heels. That's good. Okay. Maybe like shift his weight a little bit more over here. And as I make changes, if there is anything that improves the silhouette, I will do it. Doesn't matter if it starts to stray just a little bit from the reference. As long as the idea of the pose is still there, we don't care. One of the things that you're going to have to do a lot is you're going to have to shift this weight a lot. So if you make a button that kind of does that for you, it won't be such a pain when you have to shift this weight. Because normally you guys tend to hold back, as the more you start to do, say, something like this, you're like, oh, now the pose is broken, the hands fell behind. Well, don't let them fall behind then. Make a button that just selects these 3 guys automatically. You'll animate a lot faster whenever you're told to adjust your character's weight shift. So any kind of button that you make over and over, make a button for that. So hands, hips. Now if I need to adjust it, it'll already have it pre-selected for me.
So I need to make an anticipation, fix the arms, so they have.
I would strengthen, yes.
And I
These poses can still be strengthened. And be careful about this leg torquing out. Or the back leg, the one that's kind of not moving behind. Yeah, but even though I told you about that button, you're still going to have to mess around with, I guess, the hands individually. That's never gonna go away. In case you're wondering, oh, what's going on here? I'm trying to exaggerate the pose as much as I can. I'm trying to get him to stick his chest out. Look like he's sticking his chest out at least. And I'm grabbing controllers here, but I'm constantly looking, do I get the pose that I want here? That's what I'm looking for. Careful about stitching arms where they look flat. Always give them a little bit of an angle. Bend it. Still look flexible. Yeah, that's that kind of like the same thing I would be doing here. If I wanted to make him look tougher, so like that, always making a fist. So that's it. So that's pose number 1, and then there's pose number 2. What's the difference? He doesn't look as stiff. Because in here, you're almost aimed directly at the camera. So your first key pose, you should definitely tweak. This one is good, although you have him kind of looking at the camera. Again, try to avoid that. I like the tilt that you have here. Say something like this or like that. I think this one's better. And remember, you have the neck controller, and then you have the head controller. So that way I can still show a little bit of the neck. This pose again, looks okay for the most. The line of action is way stronger than the first one. What though is and I don't know if you've been noticing, but I tend to move things a little bit more towards the camera. That's why I get to really show the length of the arm. Is it always going to be like this? Not necessarily. But if I see an arm where there's foreshortening or all of a sudden the arm looks like an old knob compared to the other one, yeah, you should definitely look into that. And then here, only tweak I've done here is I pushed this arm back on purpose. And the reason I did that is, even though it wasn't a notable pose, if there's anything terribly wrong with it, I'm trying to get a little bit of negative space here. Why? So that silhouette-wise, I get that going on. I can see where the arm came from and where it went. And then I still have hints of where the arm is, so the viewer will be able to capture those. So, yeah, so he's definitely revised that first key. All these other poses are probably going to be affected by it. And then when you get to the point where your character's taking a step, you know, definitely you should still have him go up, by the way. So, so it's a short action, but it's a lot of details there. Oh, if I took points for not using the foot control properly, here's why. I can't really tell if you have a passing pose, but you're not really showing. See, at some point you need a pose where this is happening. You show the foot starting to push off from the ground, then it's airborne. If you don't do that, it's going to feel weightless. So you need to add a pose that does that somewhere. And okay, you have a contact pose. This pose arrived, or this foot arrived at the ground, and then it just stayed there. It's frozen. So as your character lands, maybe when he first takes the step, maybe the heel is this farther up, but as he starts to move around, see, it's moving. Not completely frozen. So use that as another general guide for things to fix. Are there any frozen body parts in your scene? If they are, should they be, and what are they doing at that time? And then besides acting out like I just did right now, the rest is look at your video reference. All right. So that is all I got. Do you have any questions?
So, I'm supposed to leave this be, make anticipation here.
You can't just add an anticipation and call it a day. You have to And the first thing I would do is tackle it the way it was meant to be created, which is you have your keys and your extremes. Your anticipation should have been extreme. Add that first. Then any breakdowns that have to do with creating overlap or just defining your action more. And then finally your ease in and your ease out. All right. So some of the notes of what I just did is right here in this play blast. So this is even showing you where you could possibly take that pose. Does it have to be exactly like what I just did? No. But that was just an example of like, hey, yeah, your first pose could be a little bit stronger than what it is. Okay. Got any other questions?
So this is supposed to look different?
Yes. Because essentially what I was saying is your first pose, which is more like this, is not as strong as, say, this. Because this is aimed at the camera. So you should tweak that first pose so that you have a stronger key pose. Stronger line of action, stronger silhouette. See what's going on with the arms. They look really small. And then we'll do your line of action. Straight up and down. There's hints of tilts, but it's not noticeable.
All right.
Hang in there, man. Still got time.